What's going on, Colts Nation? Welcome back to another episode of Bring the Juice. So, guys, I made a video earlier this week about how it's been reported that Jim Irsay, Colts owner, really likes quarterback of Seattle, Russell Wilson. And I wanted to just kind of dive into it because I made like a quick couple-minute video. We never really had a chance to sit down and kind of discuss the potential of Russell Wilson to Indianapolis and why, if we feel like it's a good fit for Indianapolis, or if we feel like maybe it's not such a good fit, and also talk about some realistic things for how the Colts, if they indeed wanted to get Russell Wilson, how that could potentially play out. So I think first things first, we got to talk about Derek. What were your first impressions when you saw that news floating around the NFL circles and stuff?
Yeah, I thought it was definitely true because, in the past, when there's players that the Colts reportedly are interested in, most of the time you never hear that. And, when you're hearing now that the Colts owner is specifically coming out saying that he would love to have this specific player playing for his franchise, I believe it because, I made a video a few days ago talking about, Ursay's kind of implanted himself a little more on the decision-making processes and giving ideas for Ballard, whether they be good, whether they be bad. Either way, he's doing that more now because he's wanting to see this team change for the better. So it still makes me feel pretty good because we saw what happened the last time that Jim Irsay really wanted to make sure a player stuck around, and that was with T.Y. Hilton last year. And Jim Irsay was the whole reason that T.Y. Hilton actually stayed, because if it wasn't for him, Ballard would have let him walk. So we'll see if that has any implication on this news going forward.
Yeah. So in terms of Russell Wilson as the quarterback, right? As the quarterback himself, how do you think potentially, say the Colts were to have interest in him and he was to come to Indianapolis? How do you think from a locker room standpoint and just overall what the Colts like to do on offense, how do you feel like Russell Wilson would potentially fit into what they want to do?
Well, I think for one thing, I mean, you immediately start to look at the offensive line, right? That's one thing that Russell Wilson has never had in Seattle, is never really having a great offensive line. He would have one of those here in Indianapolis. So he wouldn't have to feel the need to scramble as much as he would some other times. But the ability for him to roll out is a lot of his game. And that's what's great about Russell Wilson, is the fact that Frank Reich prides himself on having a mobile quarterback that you can use in that play action game, right? Because, Jonathan Taylor being back there, every team knows that Jonathan Taylor can get the ball 30 times a game now. So you have to be accountable of the run, which is exactly what the Russell Wilson type mold works for him, because not only would he be able to feed off that, but Russell Wilson can also move. He's certainly not the fastest quarterback in the world, but he definitely can move with some of the best of them and creating space. And he makes a lot of great throws on the run. I mean, this last season was a little difficult for him, just probably because of the hand that got messed up. But I think his play style fits perfectly into what Frank Reich specifically wants in a quarterback, and being able to feed off the play action game, because that's exactly how Russell Wilson likes to make those big plays for himself. And I think it would work perfectly for what the Colts are trying to do.
And correct me if I'm wrong, but Russell Wilson always strikes me as a guy who's a quick decision maker, right? He's get the ball out of his hands as quick as possible. Not obviously not the same quarterback at all like Philip Rivers, but in the same sense, he's smart with where he wants to go to the football, where he wants to get rid of it. He knows where he wants to get rid of it, and he's able to deliver very accurately to where he wants to get it. And I think that's exactly what the Colts wanted. When they brought in Philip Rivers, that's what he did really well. And he thrived in this Indianapolis system because he was able to do that. Do you see Russell Wilson potentially being able to do that? Be able to, get out of trouble quickly. Carson Wentz is one of his biggest knocks is he's always trying to make the big play, and sometimes to his detriment. The Tennessee game, for example, is just one that rings, true to me. But Russell Wilson doesn't strike me as a guy that tries to do that as much. He's not always trying to play. While he can lead a team, put it on his back. He's done it for years with Seattle. He's not a guy that's going to panic in the big moment. I think that's a big thing. He knows where he wants to go with the football, and he's going to get the ball out of his hands. He's going to take care of the football very well. I've always got that vibe from Russell Wilson. Do you kind of agree with that?
Yeah, I mean, he's just like any other quarterback. Some of them have a few throws that make you go like, geez, what the heck was that? But, he's going to have more turnovers than what Carson Wentz did throughout the season. That's inevitable because Russell Wilson makes a few more of those big throws. But you're right. He's much better about how much time he spends in the pocket, how to navigate, how to get out of that. And he also knows that if something's about to happen and he can't do anything with it, he most of the time is very smart about throwing the football away, getting it out of the range of anyone's hands, and living to fight another down. Sometimes that's important. Sometimes Carson Wentz got away with it. Sometimes he didn't. And sometimes Carson just made those stupid decisions that made you just scratch your head. So, I mean, Russell Wilson certainly has his fair share of mistakes, especially recently. But I do believe collectively, as a game goes along, you're right. The decision making down the stretch, I think, makes Russell Wilson a much more compatible guy because he knows in that situation how to handle it rather than panicking in those big moments.
How about just from a leadership standpoint? Because there's been some question marks, a lot of question marks around Carson Wentz's leadership this offseason, right? There's been some question marks around that. I've never really heard anything about people questioning Russell Wilson's leadership. What are your thoughts about, if he was to come to Indianapolis, how his leadership would fit into what this locker room wants to do?
I mean, he's a definite leader. There's no question about it. You're right. Nobody's ever really questioned Russell Wilson and his leadership. Decision making at times, sure, but how he handles the locker room. I mean, he had some big personalities in that Seattle locker room for many years. Okay, and his coach is a very big personality too, or was a big personality. So, he had a lot to manage. And as the quarterback of that team, he did a very good job of making sure that team, stayed on track. He was the leader there. He's a very silent guy in the locker room, that's for sure. And especially out in the open. But, he definitely lets his play speak for itself. And, that's exactly the kind of person that you want in that. I think that it would bowl very well for this young team that's still trying to figure it out. I mean, that's probably why the Colts are hiring some of these former Colts players onto the coaching staff right now because they're trying to bring back some of those guys that know what it was like to actually win and be a part of this locker room and how to decipher everything that's going on through all the emotion that's going on in the Indianapolis locker room and organization right now, trying to find some guys that will calm that and then remind these players of how things go. And if you're going to get a quarterback that's, a good man and a good leader, Russell Wilson's the best of them when it comes to that.
I mean, there's a reason why when we looked at our quarterback list, I said Russell Wilson for me was my clear favorite because I just felt like he was always the guy that you knew kind of what you were going to get with Russell, right? He's a guy that's taken his team not once but twice to the Super Bowl, right? So he's a guy that knows how to get there. He's a guy that has that championship mindset that I don't think Carson Wentz has, if I'm being completely honest, because he's been there. And he wasn't just on the team, he was leading the team to a Super Bowl win. I think that's a big difference. I mean, people like to say all the time, well, Carson Wentz put them in position to win that, which is true, but
Yes.
he didn't go win it. Russell Wilson went and won it. So I think from that standpoint, I just look at it and I'm just like, this would be a big upgrade from that department and just, show what that speaks to the locker room, right? Like you're bringing in a Super Bowl champion, a guy that, it's borderline top 10, if not top 5 quarterback year after year, So I just think from all those standpoints, it makes a ton of sense for the Colts to do this. And you finally get some stability at quarterback for the next couple of years, something that the Colts have not had in a long, long time. And Derek, this could really help. You know how the Colts have had so much instability ever since Andrew Luck retired. This could finally help give this team the stability they need.
Yes, even if that's only for like 3 years, either way, having a quarterback for multiple years to be able to stabilize that spot to allow you to fill the rest of those positions for a potential Super Bowl run. I don't care if he only has 3 years left in him. If in those 3 years you have a good shot to go and get that Super Bowl, then that's what you have to do sometimes in order to figure things out. And especially when the rest of your team you feel is ready to do that if you just fill a few holes. Now, the likelihood of Russell Wilson being brought onto this team, that's a different story. But obviously, when you look at how Russell Wilson fits with this team, it is no doubt that he fits amongst this group, and it would be insane to go and get him.
Now you mentioned like the potential to get him. Tell me what your thoughts are on the realistically the potential for the Colts to go get a guy like Russell Wilson.
The chances of them trying to get him, very, very likely. I'm sure that the Colts are probably going to throw a lot of chips at Seattle to try and get that done. Now the likelihood of it getting done, I would say, is very unlikely. I've heard everyone making the excuses, right? I don't want to hear the excuse of no draft capital or no cap or what. Nope, these players are off limits. I don't want to hear that. I don't want to hear that because that's untrue. If you have that mindset, please don't say it to me because it's not true. People, you do realize that we can give up first rounders beyond this year, right, guys? I mean, the Rams don't have a draft pick for another 2 years in the first round. They don't have one at all. They have traded away their draft picks over the last 4 years in the first round to go and get their guys that they have, and they won a Super Bowl. Okay, so it shows you can give up future first round draft picks many years down the line if that's what it takes to make sure that you can get the deal done. It does not have to be first rounders just this year. Okay, that makes it harder. It definitely makes it harder, but you can still make that happen. The ultimate thing is, I believe the Colts have every ability to make the trade happen 100%. Just the ultimate issue is it's on the other side that concerns me. Obviously, there's a no trade clause right now for Russell Wilson, so we would have to waive that in order to even be traded in the first place. And, would he trade it would he let it go to Indianapolis? I've heard people say he wants to go to a bigger market. Well, I mean, Indianapolis is very notoriously a small market. Now, of course, I think Russell Wilson probably knows wherever he goes, probably turns into a bigger market as is. And, I think Indianapolis is starting to gain a little leverage in the market room with some of the players they have and, with that NFL market that we're seeing. But, that's kind of a concern. And, like you said, I mean, does Seattle actually give that up for Russell Wilson? At least the good thing is the Colts are in the AFC, so the Seahawks wouldn't have to worry about ever seeing Russell Wilson unless they had him on their schedule one random time. But yeah, I think it's unlikely that we get that done because of just how many factors go into the fact that Russell Wilson may not choose Indianapolis. I will say this. I said this as a joke to my friend at work the other day, but I think it's funny and I think it's true. Everybody talks about, some of the weird things of why Russell Wilson wouldn't come to anywhere. And I think a few people brought up his religion as one of the weird reasons to talk about him. I'm not sure why, but I would say this. He's a Christian. You know who else is a Christian? Frank Reich. So they got that in common. Okay. So I'm making that as a joke, but it'll be very interesting to see if Russell Wilson has that kind of mindset to go to Indianapolis.
So you talked about like I personally think he would want to go to Indianapolis, and the reason being is just because Indianapolis, like they have a lot. Obviously, there's some positions they got to fill. We know this. We've talked about this all off season. But they have, you mentioned, offensive line, the best running back in football, a defense that's pretty good, and a coach that, from a moral standpoint, you talked about, in like a connection standpoint, you would think that they would connect very extremely well, right? So I could see all those things being a reason why Russell's like, look, I've been in this, Seattle market for a while now. I want to go to Indianapolis. I could see that realistically being an option. Now, again, it's going to come down to that because they have been in Seattle for their whole career, him and his wife. So we'll have to see exactly what that would be. But I don't know, man. I just feel like I never want to doubt Jim Irsay and what he says because, like you talked about it, Jim Irsay, when he wants something to get done, it's going to get done. I mean, he's the owner. He can make that happen. So it ultimately, will come down, I think, to not to if the Colts will do it, but I think, if Seattle will do it, number one, and if Russell Wilson wants to come to Indianapolis. And we'll see. We'll see exactly what that'll be. But I do think the Colts will have to probably send away a star player, and I think that probably is going to be Ryan Kelly. I think we've talked about this before. It makes the most sense for me. I know there's been thoughts about Big Q. I don't personally see the Colts trading him away. I think he's far too valuable to this team from a locker room and leadership standpoint for them to trade him away. But I mean, regardless, I think the Colts are going to have to swing for the fences here, if they want to go get a quarterback and they realistically want to upgrade from Carson Wentz. And if all goes well, I mean, it's a pipe dream right now, but this is the NFL, man. Anything can happen. So I'm just looking forward to that. Do you have any other thoughts here on this Russell Wilson hype train right now to Indianapolis?
I definitely think that Russell Wilson could be the quarterback that helps elevate this team to where they want to be. I'll just throw a random trade out there for you.
Okay.
You just let me know whether or not you think this is a good one or not. Carson Wentz, Ryan Kelly, and 2 future first-round draft picks for Russell Wilson.
Okay, so Carson Wentz, Ryan Kelly, how many? 2 of them?
2 of them, the next 2.
Yeah, I mean,
So
I would be
2023
fine with that
2024.
personally.
I'd be fine
Now
with it.
we'll
They get future
Seattle be
first
okay with it.
rounders. They get a quarterback to replace them, and they get a center that's a potential top 5 center in the league. So,
Yeah.
I mean, that fixes a couple different things for them. They're already on a rebuild.
Exactly. That's my thing. Like, do they want to keep him, or because I kind of think of it like similar to Detroit? They're rebuilding at this point. Do they want to keep Russell Wilson, or they just want to kind of tear the Band-Aid off and just restart? And I think we don't know that exactly, but I would think that that would be the route they'd want to go. It'd make the most sense to me to try to do that. So if you're bad, you're bad. And you fix it and you move on, and you hopefully in a couple of years you're good again. That's the goal, right? So it would make a lot of sense for me. And also just from Russell Wilson's standpoint, it's like he's only got he doesn't have that many years left, right? So you think he'd want to go to a team that's a potential contender, a team that's, he thinks if I come in and quarterback them, I think this team's going to, go to the promised land. Now there's a couple teams that come to mind. I think Denver's a name that, a lot of people have talked about. They've been linked more to Aaron Rodgers, I feel like, at this point. But honestly, you look at it, and I want to get your opinion on this, Derek. I look at the teams that, would potentially be looking for a quarterback. I personally think Indianapolis is the best option right now out of any of these quarterback needy teams. Now, is there a team you think maybe potentially is a better situation than Indianapolis?
I mean, the only one that I think at the moment, the only couple that would be potentially better is, I mean, the ones is Tampa Bay. Tampa Bay is going to be one for sure. I mean, even if they lose some of their offensive firepower, still have a great offensive line, still have a couple weapons over there, and their defense is one of the best in the league, and they have a great coach in Bruce Arians. So, that they're pretty much in the same boat as the Colts. But they might actually be a little bit better when it comes to the weapons category. But and I think Green Bay is going to be another one if Rodgers ends up leaving because, I mean, Matt LaFleur, he's already established that he's a really good coach in this league, and they have weapons and they'll have some good spots here and there, but not many people are excited to move to Green Bay though, of all things. So, that might be a little bit different. So Indianapolis, playing indoors in Indianapolis probably does sound a little better for some people. And that was another reason I said for Russell Wilson, bro, you're playing indoors. You're playing indoors 70% of your season. So you don't have to worry too much about, playing in the cold, so you don't got to worry about that anymore.
Yeah. And here's the thing. Both those teams are in the NFC. The Seahawks aren't trading them to the NFC.
Right.
I want to trade them to the AFC. And maybe I should have rephrased the question to name a better team in the AFC than the Colts right now that are looking for a quarterback. You'd be hard pressed to find one, I think, right now. Now Denver's probably the closest one, I would think, a team that's a quarterback needed. But the Colts had a better record than Denver last year.
Yeah, the Colts are a better team at the moment than Denver, and not to mention they're in a weaker division than Denver. So
yeah, exactly.
Why would you want to go to a division that had 3 teams that went to the playoffs just the previous year and a 4th one that barely missed it? I mean, that is easily by far the best division in football at the moment.
Exactly. So, all right, guys, well, let us know what your thoughts are on Russell Wilson potentially at Indianapolis. Give us overall, your impressions on some of our conversations. Do you think it makes a lot of sense for the Colts to potentially go after a guy like Russell Wilson? Do you think it makes sense for Russell Wilson in turn to come to Indianapolis? What do you think it would take to get him here? How do you think he'd fit into this team? What they want to do, the locker room, and all that good stuff? Let us know in the comments below. Thank you guys so much for tuning in. Really appreciate all the support. And as always, guys, go Colts.